Good morning. I know it's cold outside. It should be quite warm in the room. So good morning, everyone. Great, thank you. The Danish ambassador to Uganda, our keynote speaker, Professor Frederick Chuko, members of parliament present, members of the diplomatic corps, partners of the Editors Guild, Twaweza East Africa. I see the executive director is around. Executive members of the Editors Guild, members of the Guild, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome all of you to the inauguration of the Uganda Editors Guild. Thank you for joining us very early this morning. We're running a little behind time. We've been waiting for more quorum, but I think we're going to start now. And without wasting too much time, I want to invite our first speaker, Ms. Barbara Kaijer, who with 5 others, formed the idea of the Editors Guild. And I'll mention the 5 others as she makes her way to the podium. Barbara Kaijer, Adolphe Mbaine, Rosemary Kemigisha, Peter Mwesige, and Honorable Paul Amuru. They're all members of the International Training Program, ITP, a media project funded by Sweden. So Barbara is going to set the stage for the rest of the program for today and give us some insights into what the Editors Guild is about.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Ambassador, Danish Embassy, Nikolai Herberg, Professor Frederick Juko, our keynote speaker for today, members of Parliament present, the Diplomatic Corps, our partners Twaweza, the Editors Guild Executive, members of the Guild, ladies and gentlemen, mine is a very brief responsibility, but today is an exciting day. It's bad we have the masks on so you can't see my smile, but it's like the baby has been finally born, and just like any mother, I'm excited about it. In 2018, courtesy of the Swedish Embassy, we had the opportunity, I with 5 other people, or with 6 actually, because we also had Dr. Mwesige Peter, who was like our coordinator, went out to Sweden and to Denmark. And our mission was to sit in one room and discuss media. We found people from 5 other countries, 6 other countries in Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and we all did sit and talk about the media in our country. I think the discussion helped us to realize a few things. The challenges we face as media in Africa are similar, but we are at different levels of addressing it. And one thing which was very clear for us as the media in Uganda, we had hot discussions, believe me. We had very hot discussions with people like Peter Okello Jabweli, Rosemary Kemigisha, in one room, and we really had hot discussions. We also had a member of parliament, Honorable Paul Amor. I don't know whether he'll be in today. So we kept discussing. Of course, we had our regulator. We had our regulator as well from UCC, Waiswa. And we argued a lot. Uganda had a very open discussion. Actually, at one time, our lecturers thought we were going to fight, but no, we are not fighting. We're just discussing about different things. Do we have a free media? Don't we have a free media? What can we do to act better? How do we get all this together? We realized we had a big loophole. Our colleagues were talking about united bodies, united editors' bodies. Kenya was a very good example for us. They had an Editors Guild, and the Editors Guild seemed to have everything in control. On our side, we agreed that we needed to professionalize the media, but we were starting from nowhere because even as editors, we could hardly meet. I hardly met Daniel. I hardly met the other editors. We hardly talked about the issues we had as an organization. And we felt, yes, we want to professionalize the media. We can talk about government, we can talk about all the other issues, but the starting point should be for us to come together. So that is how the Editors Guild was born. It became our class project for that particular year, 2018. And when we came back, we did the initial discussions, got an interim committee for the Editors Guild, and we're so grateful to Daniel and his team. I know you will introduce them, but because I'm setting the tone, I would like them to stand up for recognition. Daniel, please stand up with your team for recognition. So those are the guys who are responsible for us being here. I'm not sure that in my group there is anybody from my ITP group. Is there anybody present yet? No, they are not yet here, but I represent them well. Okay, George is from ITP Group 2. So that's a different story now. So after the ITP 1, we also got the ITP Group 2. ITP Group 2 have grown this vision of the Editors Guild. From this morning, this afternoon, we are going to have another function with the Uganda Media Working Sector. And the ITP Group, which is led by Dr. George Lugalambi. Dr. George, you can stand up for recognition with ITP Group 2. Have given birth to the Uganda Media Working Sector. Now, the working sector will bring all the different organizations together. Because we didn't have an Editors Guild, we had to start with an Editors Guild. But of course, we've got very many other associations. Uganda Journalists Association, Uganda Media Women's Association. We've got all those different groups together. So the Uganda Media Working Sector, which is going to meet this afternoon to celebrate today, our Press Freedom Day, is a project born by ITP2. It's also a Swedish-sponsored group. So we are grateful to the Swedish government. I don't know whether the ambassador is here or not, but we are grateful to them for helping us to come together to talk about media freedom in Uganda. Briefly, that is how we are born. As we celebrate today, the challenges we face are still many. Of course, one of the media, freedom of speech and freedom of media is enshrined in our constitution. And we believe as practicing journalists that provided we are accurate, provided we are balanced, provided we are fair, provided we are professional, we should be free to expense our professionalism in the media. That is the Uganda we want, where we can speak, because media is a development partner. When we speak for the people. We are the eyes and the ears of society. There are communities which will never be able to voice out the pains they're experiencing, and when we speak to them. The challenge is whether we can buy enough of that space to be able to continue speaking. I would say the current government, at least in the constitution, the spirit is that yes, we can speak provided we are professional. The practice is not always that. Sometimes we do get in trouble, but we hope that we can still buy more of that space. And I want to say that this space will not always be given to us. We have to negotiate for it. And one of the ways of negotiating for it is through professionalism. If we can continue to be professional and we can defend what we've written about, that will always help us. Of course, the challenge is that though we've got in the Constitution, we are entitled to getting, we have access to information in the Constitution. When it comes to practice, it's a bit different. It's like, especially in our civil service, there is a curtail on information. In the Constitution, it says you have access In practice, there is a cartel. Of course, that means we'll always be looking out for information. And sometimes we'll get it wrong. And when we do get it wrong, that always cuts down on our credibility. Of course, we've got the challenges of fake media that is coming in through online media. And we've been victims. Only this weekend, my media house had to run an apology. It was actually a tweet that came, I don't know whether it was a tweet or something, that came through WhatsApp. And one of our journalists picked it up. The American embassy had, I think the European Union had warned somebody, and it happened to be fake. So we pulled it down, of course, within minutes of putting it up, but you know how social media rushes? Some people had already picked it up. So then the debate was, do we apologize? Don't we apologize? Yes, you must apologize. You must apologize because you have led some people wrong. Now, this is the situation within which we work. How do we get a professional media if we, the editors, can't sit to even discuss those basics? At least Daniel and I should be agreed that, yes, Barbara, when we get it wrong, we apologize. You know what that does? It buys us credibility. It buys us credibility. It means when we put something out, our audiences will trust us. Ugandans will trust us. They will know that, yes, they got it wrong the other time, they apologize. So if they've not apologized for this one, it must be true. Of course, the other major challenge we are faced with as the media in Uganda, but I think also international, is the economic pressure. And this is real. Media houses are closing. We've lost quite a number of media, including radio stations. We don't know how long the situation will go in, and that is easy because somebody has to pay for the journalism if we are to continue operating. We are coming up with different models to help us survive. We are trying to get alternative revenue medias, and it always reminds me of the history of media even in the Americas, in as far as the 17th century. The families which started media houses actually had alternative businesses to fund media. You'll talk of the first family that started the first media house. They had a bakery, and it's from the money they got from baking bread that they funded the media. Of course, we'll have to come up with such innovations. It's not easy when you're used to thriving on the advertiser's dollar. But of course, the advertiser's dollar is no more now, and we need innovations. We've got all the issues of professionalism and how much we pay our journalists and whether we can retain talent and retain professionalism. Those are all the challenges we are grappling with as we celebrate the World Media Freedom Day today. But we hope that with these brotherhoods, with these sisterhoods, we can be able to discuss, even as editors, about professionalizing our teams, and we can be able to do better. As I leave the podium, we want to thank you so much, Daniel, and the interim committee for the Editors Guild for bringing today to be when we launch officially. And we pray that we'll be able to bring everybody together so that we go beyond Kampala to the whole country, bring the whole media fraternity in. And of course, I wish the Uganda media working sector success. They already launched earlier. I wish them success as they bring all of us together so that we don't hear other organizations saying we've been left behind. We want to move together. Our pledge to Uganda is we want a professional media. We want a credible media. We realize that for us to serve you well, we must be professional. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jasmine. And I'm sorry if I took long.
Thank you very much, Barbara. To keep with time, we're going to play a video recording now from Friends of the Guild in terms of solidarity with the Editors Guild. And as they find the clip and start to run it, I'll just let you know who's going to be in that clip speaking to us. We have Dr. Peter Mwesige, who is a founding member as well, and ex-NIJU president. We also have Linda Nabsai, who is an ex-NIJU president. We have President, Kenya Editors Guild, Churchill Otieno, and we have East African Editors Forum by 2 representatives from Tanzania and from Ethiopia. So let's play that clip.
So I congratulate the Editors Guild on its official launch, and I'm very proud to have played a part in its formation. I think it's a very important voice in self-organization of the media and self-regulation, generally speaking. We are all hoping that the Editors Guild is going to promote a professional fellowship, but also protect journalists, against attacks that we are seeing, increasingly. One of the things about the Editors Guild which excites me is that it would have the clout that usually eludes media associations. I mean, listen, this is a group that has all the senior editors, and content managers from across the media. That makes it particularly important as a bulwark against, attacks on the press and on the media generally. Because in the past, the government has sometimes tended to go through the business side of the media, the managers, the owners and all that. So we are hoping that the Editors Guild can promote the professional side of the business, the standards, that journalists need to be, working on, and that ultimately this really will serve not just the media, but the public. So once again, I congratulate the Editors Guild, and I'm wishing you great celebrations this morning. Thank you very much.
I am Linda Nabusai Wamboka, the immediate past president of the National Institute of Journalists of Uganda. I'm currently the senior press secretary to the President of the Republic of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very important day when we join the media fraternity to mark the World Press Freedom Day. Today we support the media because it's a constant target of restraint from both within and from without. From without because of the constant clashes as evidence between the security forces and the media, and from within because of the weaknesses in the media fraternity itself, lack of salaries, lack of contracts, and also self-censorship due to economic reasons. Let us remember our colleagues who have died in the line of duty, but let us also remember that there's no story that is worth your life. But your life is very important because you need to tell the stories that will change the world and make it a better place. The media is facing enormous challenges now during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of our colleagues have lost jobs, some of them have succumbed to the pandemic, and media houses are struggling to survive. As our theme for this year goes, information is a public good. We must provide information that is factual, reliable, and impartial to enable our communities make the right decisions, especially at this very challenging time. I want to congratulate the Editors Guild upon their recent victory that challenged the registration of the journalists by the Media Council of Uganda without an operational National Institute of Journalists of Uganda. As the immediate past president of National Institute of Journalists of Uganda, our mandate then was to push for the professionalization of the media and equip them with the necessary tools and equipment to embrace the emerging digital platforms that are new normal today. Initially, the media practitioners did respond positively to this call, and they enrolled with NIJU. But these were very few and far between, and mainly from the more established media. There was a particular resistance to a registration by a government body, which was NIJU at the time. And the proposal then was that we should establish our own independent media council. The lack of cooperation among the media fraternity at the time did not make this happen either. NIJU failed to deliver on its mandate, including the failure to convene a General Assembly due to lack of funds. There was no funding from government to facilitate NIJU, and the activities and members' contributions also dwindled to zero. These developments, however, present us with another chance to unite in our diversity of ideas and face challenges that affect our trade with a strong voice as a media. We welcome with great anticipation the launch of the Uganda Editors Guild today. We are confident that these professionally grounded colleagues, whose passion for our profession is unquestionable, are erecting another cornerstone that will see our profession flourish. The Editors Guild and the Media Council have an opportunity to make government accountable by supporting the creation of an independent media council that is free of manipulation and that is properly grounded and that is properly facilitated. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 3 issues I want to leave with you today as we commemorate our day. The first one is professionalism. We need to put our house in order. You cannot fight a war with troops you don't know, with troops you've not trained, and with troops you've not equipped. Our journalists must not be statistics used to prove that they are abused. With over 400 journalists, 200 radio stations, and over a dozen television stations, we must protect the media from all kinds of abuse with a strong media backing. The second one is media welfare. Ladies and gentlemen, the media is perhaps the most thankless job that we do, but it's also the least paying job. Most of our grassroots soldiers, the journalists, are rarely paid, some of them for months. Most of them don't have running contracts, and this creates a problem. They can easily be compromised. Those that break the media's resolve to do their job exploit this weakness. The third one, ladies and gentlemen, is how do we ensure our strategic survival in this era of civic and activist journalism? Every human being who has a phone is a journalist and is a cameraman with no ethics and no pay. How do we tackle the issue of fake news and misinformation, particularly harmful information, without promoting it? How do we remain relevant as a profession in the face of this changing terrain in the media? Let's work towards press freedom with information as our public good. I thank you and I wish you a very good day.
My name is Deodatus Balile. I'm the chairperson for Tanzania Editors Forum. I understand today in Uganda you have a big day for the media fraternity where you are inaugurating Uganda Editors Guild. We in Tanzania, we had the opportunity to inaugurate ours in 2009. I know what it takes to draw together editors, to put them together under the same roof. So it's a big milestone which you have achieved, and I congratulate you so much. These media organizations or professional organizations, they are normally entrusted with the duties. I understand Uganda Editors Guild with zero match on holding dearly professionalism, where they will make sure journalists and media institutions in the country are upholding professionalism to make sure that we keep the credibility of the profession. Secondly, I understand Uganda Editors Guild will encourage media organizations to be accountable. Accountability is a duty which the media should shoulder, as the media is not there to injure the society, but rather to make sure it's putting right what is wrong. And I understand also that the Uganda Editors Guild will advocate for press freedom, access to information, and the freedom of expression, which are fundamental human rights that are helping other rights to be realized. But also there is one pertinent issue and a bit contentious, which I touch with the caution, and this is none other than partisanism. That I wish Uganda Editors Guild would encourage the media fraternity and journalists in the country to avoid partisanism. And you know well that there should be a clear line between journalism as a profession and the politics. I know how it damages the credibility if it is not checked properly. If we align our media with the political parties, be sure that we will be mortgaging the media credibility. Otherwise, I wish you well. I hope you will stay the course and no infights will ensue once you secure funding and whatnot, as it is a common for most media organizations, not only in Uganda nor in Tanzania, but across the world. Tanzania Editors Forum will be ready in the spirit of East African community cooperation and the brotherhood to make sure that if the need arises, we'll be ready to extend the helping hand to our sisters and brothers in Uganda. And you are welcome to work with us as East Africans, as a bloc in this community, to make sure that we up the standards of journalism. And I congratulate you so much for setting up this and inaugurating this Uganda Editors Guild. Thank you very much.
My name is Churchill Lutino, President of the Kenya Editors Guild. I bring greetings and commendations from the editors in Kenya to our sisters and brothers in Uganda on the occasion of the inauguration of the Uganda Editors Guild. Today, on May 3rd, the year 2021. It is a great day indeed to see colleagues, counterparts, and I must say many of my friends amongst yourselves come together and create a strong and credible organization that then can inspire and attract the confidence of not only editors, but also the entire fraternity of journalists and indeed media in the Pearl of Africa. We pursue journalism in interesting but tough times, and indeed, to forge ahead, to remain committed, we must find innovative and creative ways to keep doing independent journalism.
Hello everyone, my name is Buru Yumbalai. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Editors Guild of Ethiopia, and I'm sending this message from Addis Ababa to congratulate you on the successful establishment of the Editors Guild of Uganda. It's a great milestone, it's a big step for Ugandan journalists and editors that the guild has been established, and we, the Ethiopian Editors Guild, will be looking forward to cooperating and working with you, and also have a greater role in the bigger platform, the Eastern African Editor Society. We'll be working together on lots of projects and lots of things, and I'm looking forward to it. Me and my colleagues are looking forward to this and hope that we'll get together soon and discuss on ways where we can be able to take East African journalism to the next level. Again, congratulations, and thank you for inviting me to make this short speech on the establishment of your guild. Thank you.
We've had Ethiopia, Tanzania, and colleagues from Uganda. We're going to move very quickly with our program. I'm going to invite partners of the Editors Guild to Aweza East Africa. First of all, we'd like to thank you for your support in putting all of this together. I'm going to ask Ms. Marie Nanyanzi from Aweza East Africa to come and share findings of a study of the public perceptions on treatment of journalists in Uganda, after which she will invite the Executive Director to speak to us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. My name is Marina Nyanzi, and I work with Aweza East Africa as a Senior Program Officer for Sauti za Wananchi. So today what we are sharing is the citizens' views and opinions on the freedom of expression and the media. A slight twist in the title. The data we are sharing is from a program called Sauti za Wananchi, which is a nationally representative mobile phone survey carried out across the entire country. We've been doing this since 2017, and we closed our first panel last year. We are starting a new panel very soon. How we did this, we worked with UBOS, which is the custodian of all data in Uganda, to randomly select 200 enumeration areas across the entire country. In each of these enumeration areas, we selected 10 households, and for each of the households that were selected, we selected one respondent. And this formed the panel of 2,000 respondents. So because we know that to reach citizens very fast and also in the hard-to-reach areas, it takes a lot of finances to do that. So we place mobile phones and solar chargers. And because we know that in Uganda, the mobile phone ownership is highly skewed towards the wealthy, we did not want to exclude those that are from the poorer households. So we gave out mobile phones, basic mobile phones, Dakatochi, to each of the respondents that we recruited. And we also gave out that solar charger to simply have that phone active, but not necessarily to change the socioeconomic status of that household. So what we are sharing is data from our round 18, which was conducted in December last year. And we spoke to 1,500 respondents. So in this data, we are going to share 7 insights about Ugandans' views on media. First of all, let's understand which media are Ugandans viewing. We did see from our data that most citizens point to radio as their main source of information, and we also see a growing number that point to TV as a main source of information. With radio, this has grown from, has dropped from 74% to 72% in 2020. For the television, this grew from 13% to 16% in 2020 compared with 2019. So TV viewership as a main source of information is growing compared to the radio. To understand who exactly watches TV, this is largely the urban, the wealthy, and more educated. Radio is really for the masses. So looking at who do the citizens, in terms of what do they trust, which source of information do they trust completely, we see that what they hear from radio is the most trusted, and between 2019 and 2020, this did not change so much because 1% is really not that significant. Then for TV, it's still about 45% of the population that trust completely what they see on TV. When it comes to the information that citizens get from public meetings or forums, we see that there was a drop from 58% in 2019 to 37% in 2020. So citizens do not necessarily believe what they get from, say, political campaigns and so on. And with this chart, what we can probably think about is what is it that makes citizens consistently trust radio and TV to a point that they're not trusting what their leaders are telling them in the public meetings? Is it that you're able to do all the interrogation of that data and all the information that is given out, that citizens are able to trust what you give? We have other data on who exactly they trust, as in for the different newspapers, TV stations, and so on, but we don't want to share that here. So going to the support for freedom of the press, we see that this has grown a little over the past year, where we looked at a pair of statements to just understand this a little bit more. When it comes to the media, the statement that the media should have the right to publish views and ideas without government, we see that this, the proportion that agree with this has grown from 54% in 2019 to 57% in 2020. Then when we look at those that agree that the freedom of speech is a human right, so anybody should be allowed to become a journalist. This has grown also slightly from 57% to 61% in the last, in a period of 1 year. Then looking at TV, radio, being free to produce and broadcast their own news programs, we also see a growth in the number of people that support this, that agree with this, from a 58% to 63% in 2020. That is over a period of 1 year. Then when it comes to the statement that in practice, the Ugandan media is independent, balanced, and unbiased. Here we saw a decline, a 10% decline. So in the period of between 2019 and 2020, 10% of the citizens in Uganda lost trust in the media having balanced, independent, and unbiased news, where we saw that more of them were of the view that the powerful people that own the media houses dictate what is broadcasted. So again, to continue with the aspect of government control, when we look at the different statements that we shared with the citizens, most citizens believe that the media should be critical. We see that about 8 in 10 support the view that the news media should constantly investigate and report on government mistakes and corruption. Then they also strongly believe that criticism of leaders is a good thing. It helps them to stop making big mistakes. And this has also significantly grown. So they are relying on the press to be able to do that, criticize the duty bearers so that they don't make more mistakes. Then on the statement, government should only be able to restrict access to information that is vital to national security. We see that citizens are consistently in support of this. This number has slightly grown from 69% to 72%. And the question is, why is it that citizens are consistently thinking that the government should come in on issues of national security and curb or stop any media house when they're going to produce a story that is contrary to that? Then, again, to continue, citizens also strongly agree that people should be allowed to criticize national leaders since it helps the government correct mistakes. We also see that our citizens strongly believe that if the government wants to punish a newspaper, they should justify their decision in court. So the last insight that I'm sharing today is just to show that a rising number of citizens say that they would be unwilling to be interviewed by a journalist. And we see that this number has grown from 13% to 22% in 2020. That is when we compare with 2019. To conclude, radio is still a king, but we see that TV is also growing. Then TV and radio have maintained steady levels of trust, while other sources of information, especially public gatherings, the trust has declined. Then in the view of press freedom, citizens are more nuanced. They are fairly supportive of government controls on content. That is 43% have that view. And on what a journalist can be, although the majority disagree with these ideas. At the same time, a much larger proportion of the citizens agree that the media should hold government to account. In all cases, citizens have become more supportive of the press freedom between 2019 and 2020. These are the questions that I've been mentioning before. What can we do to boost the citizen support of media freedom, because we've seen in the recent times it's getting worse by the day. Secondly, what makes citizens trust radio and TV consistently and not the other leaders or the other platforms that they have available? Then why do citizens support government regulations on content and journalism as a profession? Because they support the press freedom, but they also want to support the government regulation on what is produced. Thank you so much. This data is available, free for anyone to use. Thank you so much. At this point, I want to invite Mr. Aiden Yakuze, Executive Director, Twaweza East Africa. Thank you.
Good morning. It is so wonderful to be here, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you a story. This is my first official visit out of Tanzania for almost 3 years. And you may know why. Would you allow me to remove this mask? Because when I talk, it fogs up my glasses and I don't see your beautiful faces. Let me do this. Is that okay? You won't arrest me? You won't deport me? My name is Aiden Yakuze. I'm Executive Director of Twaweza East Africa, and it really is an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I realize this baby who was being hailed, the Uganda Editors Guild, has been in gestation for 3 years. That's longer than an elephant. You know, elephant, I don't know how to take 18 months, twice as long as an elephant. But it's fantastic that you're here. And as Twaweza, we're really, really happy to be working with you. I'd like to just honor and recognize my colleagues, Marie and Martha. Please stand up. These are 2 of our 15 secret weapons in Uganda. And they work really, really hard to hear the voices of Ugandans. Thank you. To hear the voices of Ugandans and to work with you to put them out into the public domain so that you understand how they're feeling and experiencing life and the delivery of public services, especially from government, but also to hopefully shape how government responds to what they're saying, policy making, even the communication. So I had a presentation that was a little bit editor-like, and I thought, but I'd be an imposter. I'm not an editor. I'm a massive consumer of news, your products, but I'm not a journalist, I'm not a writer, I'm not an editor. But I am an economist. And so I was intrigued by the title, Information as a Public Good. So excuse the one-slide economic lecture, this one. What is a public good? Essentially, a public good must be non-rivalrous and non-excludable, which means that people can consume a public good without reducing its supply. So if you walk under a street lamp, you know, in the middle of the night, when you go, somebody else can also walk under that street lamp without it being dimmed by the fact that you've walked underneath it, right? So that's non-rivalrous. And then you can't charge somebody for walking under a street lamp, right? So information, though, say, no, but information is not a public good. And there are aspects to the fact that information is not a public good because you pay money to collect, and then through firewalls and subscriptions and other things, you get people to pay for it. But then you can't actually stop them from disseminating that information. Once I've paid for it, I can photocopy and share it with others. Hopefully I won't get caught for photocopying copyrighted material, right? So when you copyright, you make it a little bit excludable. End of economic lecture. How does information, more and more of it, play a role in being a public good? We're living through a pandemic. And the reason why I put that picture up there is because I think, as I was sitting here thinking, the coronavirus is definitely a negative public good. Okay, the virus is completely non-rivalrous and non-excludable. We all can be, and some of us have been, infected. And it has had a massive effect on the way we live our lives as a human civilization. And yet information about the coronavirus has been problematic, to say the least. And hence that image I put up there of Tanzania being cradled by a public health worker. Because for going on 12 months, we have ignored officially the existence of the coronavirus. It's there, it has come, it has ravaged through our nations, but we cannot tell you how many people are infected. We don't know. We cannot tell you officially how many people have died. We don't know. At some point, we were being told that people were dying of acute respiratory difficulties or pneumonia. And in Kiswahili, we started spelling pneumonia N-I-M-O-N-I-A. Pneumonia. We can't spell it the Greek way. Information, in essence, in Tanzania about the coronavirus was suppressed. Only now are we beginning to talk about it quasi-officially. Hopefully, we shall have the bravery to start testing and publishing numbers as to how many of us have been infected, how many have passed away, how many have recovered, as a way also of moving forward and seeking international cooperation to get Tanzanians vaccinated. But the pandemic is one of 5 really important global challenges that we're facing contextually. And I put this before you because it's not just a global challenge in our communities. All 5 of these are manifesting. The health, the pandemic, which could become endemic. Yeah? People are telling us we now have to live with it. How do we live with it? How do we equip each other in our communities to live with this coronavirus? Economic fragmentation. We did a survey, similar, Sauti za Wananchi, in Kenya, and found that the people suffering most, everybody suffered, but the ones who've borne the biggest brunt of the economic dislocation of the pandemic are urban informal sector workers. I am sure it is probably the same in Uganda. Urban informal sector workers. This inequality between those who have and those who don't have, those who have access to working from home and online ways of earning income, are way ahead. Others are being left behind. How do we deal with this economic fragmentation? We won't even talk about the inequality around the distribution of vaccines in the world. Social inequality and fracture, same, as a result of the different experience with the pandemic and its economic dislocation. There's one that is really close to my heart because I also am involved with the Open Government Partnership. You may or may not have heard of it. A community of 78 countries, over 70 local government authorities, some as small as Kigoma Ujiji to the south of Uganda, and some as large as the country of Scotland or the city of Los Angeles. They're all working towards achieving 3 things in how government works: transparency, accountability, and citizen participation and engagement in the policies that make them. And one of the things that the OGP is really working hard to stop and reverse is this democratic retreat or a democratic recession and the lure of authoritarianism and populism. And the media has sometimes been roped into promoting the democratic retreat. So this is also familiar to us in this region as well. I told you about the example of Tanzania. And I heard about examples here in Uganda. So how do we address this? And of course, finally, climate change. If there is something that is a public good, that is completely non-excludable and non-rivalrous, it is our climate and its health. We have to find a way to protect it, to make sure that future generations are not excluded from a clean planet. So all of these are global, but also deeply local challenges. And information about them and how to deal with them, the triumphs that individuals and communities are achieving, the challenges that are facing us, are vitally important in order for us to navigate successfully all of the challenges that they collectively represent. It's not going, there we go. And so I think I'll end with this particular question mark. Marie showed us what Ugandans trust in terms of media houses. Radio is king, television is rising, social media way down at the bottom. Public rallies, a massive reduction in the trust of citizens in the quality and validity of the information that is received from public rallies. But the media houses themselves, my compatriot Deodatus Balile said, let's avoid partisanship. And Twaweza, we studiously avoid partisanship. Unless, of course, you're a party newspaper, then I suppose you can't be non-partisan, right? But let's try and avoid partisanship. How do we rebuild the trust in the information and the analysis and the education and even the entertainment that we provide as media houses? So in the confluence of those 5 global crises, I think one big challenge that is facing the media fraternity and sorority, and that has implications for its own economic viability, is this issue of trust. Do you engender, create, encourage people to trust what it is that you're saying, what it is that is being put out there? And once they trust, then they can act. Once we trust, we can take maybe some of those difficult steps towards dealing with those particular challenges. And so, as Twaweza, we work really hard, and we want to continue working with the Editors Guild, with independent journalists who we try to encourage to take our data and then put the human story around that data so that more people can understand, can read, can relate, and can act on what it is that they see. We worked with, I can't remember their name now, Martha, the ones who did that wonderful video, Yambala Mask. Fun Factory, yes. That Yambala Mask video came directly out of a statistical a survey, you know. So there's a connection you can make between boring statistics and fantastic videos that you put online and on television to encourage people to wear masks. And people trust Fun Factory. And we hopped onto Fun Factory's trust to send a message about a statistic around mask wearing. So I really congratulate you. I look forward to working with more of Uganda's media fraternity to help build and rebuild the trust of the media and ultimately citizens' trust in their own society, the community, and their own government. We're all working towards the future, but what kind of future will it be? The first draft of history is always drafted by the media. So what kind of draft of history will you be providing for us? I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aidan from Twaweza. Good morning once again. My name is Charles Odongtho, and together with my colleague Josephine, I'm assisting to moderate the discussions going on. I'm a journalist and by training and occupation, but I'm also a lawyer by training. And I currently do a talk show called Behind the Headlines on UBC, the national broadcaster. I just want to, as we move towards the next program, I want to remind us that this is part of the celebration of World Press Freedom Day under the theme, Information as a Public Good. And I'm personally pleased, of course, to be here amidst very talented, thought journalists in the country and in the region, senior lawyers, professors, my own professor of law, Professor Juko. I'm not going to be the one introducing him. That enviable honor is for another senior colleague, Pius, who I will shortly be inviting to do just that. But just so we don't forget, especially for those who walked in as Aidan was making his speech, we have had a presentation and opening remark from Madame Barbara, who dwelt a lot on the challenge of the current media landscape in Uganda and probably in the region. But just to quote her, she said, when we speak for the people, and we are the eyes and ears of the public, and that the challenge is, can the public buy the content? And that's where she dwelt a lot, and going into a lot of other issues. So we should remember that question amidst the challenges of, advertising going low. Can we survive that challenge? On that note, allow me now invite Pius Mutekani Katunzi. He is the CEO of the Observer newspaper, to come and say a bit of whatever he has planned to say, and then invite the keynote presenter for this morning. Pius, you have 5 minutes or less, not more, and Professor will have 20 minutes or less to give the keynote presentation. You're most welcome, Pius. And kindly, please, it's not a morning day, journalists. So if you feel you should clap or thank the person who has given a speech here, do it well. Okay? We are not in a morning session or occasion, so just feel happy about this day and reflect. Thank you very much, Pius.
Thank you, Charles. I know I've been introduced as the CEO of the Observer, but I feel more comfortable, especially for this day, being introduced as the managing editor of the Observer. I think it's more apt for the occasion. Nevertheless, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Frederick Juko, to this event to mark the World Freedom Press Day. Professor Juko is a distinguished professor of law at the Uganda Matters University School of Law. He's also the dean. But I think many of you have known him to be a professor of law and jurisprudence at Makerere University. As a distinguished scholar of law and jurisprudence, Professor Juko has taught laws for over 43 years, mainly at Makerere University. He has written and published extensively in jurisprudence, constitutionalism. His articles and papers on human rights, constitutionalism, independence of judiciary, governance issues are well known and published in different academic journals. He has been the Dean of School of Law at Makerere University. He was the head of commercial law and jurisprudence. He has taught media law at the Department of Journalism and Communication. He has taught constitutional law, human rights, and a law of torts and jurisprudence. As his former student at Makerere University School of Law, Professor Juko taught me foundation of tort law and jurisprudence. The tort law is very close to media because it's the law about civil wrongs and at times labor relations. So among the common civil wrongs that afflict journalists is the threat of being slapped with defamatory suits. Jurisprudence is sometimes described as the eyes of the law. A legal scholar who appreciates jurisprudence is distinguished from the mechanical one, who is likened to a plumber, whose challenge is to fix broken pipes and fastening nuts and bolts. Ladies and gentlemen, we couldn't have gotten an apt speaker. Professor Juko is a researcher and has published a book, The Fourth Estate, Media Freedom and Right in Uganda. The book, among other things, touches on the status of the laws and regulations of media rights in Uganda. Those who are still undecided about whether journalists should be licensed to practice their trade are advised to get a copy of this book. You can advise us where to get a copy from. He was a consultant for the book project of former Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki. The book is The Search for National Consensus, The Making of Uganda Constitution, 1995. He has been involved in public litigation efforts. He's an advocate of courts of judicature in Uganda and by necessary implication, East Africa. He's an alma mater of Makerere University and Dar es Salaam University. He has been a member of the editorial board of Uganda Law Report, editor of East African Journal of Peace and Human Rights, and he's one of the experts from Uganda who reviewed and made proposals on a yet-to-be promulgated Constitution of the United Republic of Tanzania. This morning, Professor Juko is going to talk to us about press freedom, freedom of expression, and militarism. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Professor Juko.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, good morning. I'm happy to be here to share in the commemoration of World Press Freedom Day, and in particular to address this issue of the interface in Uganda between militarism and the media, and in that context, how we can ensure press freedom. So I would like to reflect with you on the conditions and the context within which the media in Uganda struggles to assert their freedom in the context of militarism. Hopefully, from what I say, some sense of direction will be identified to guide all of us Ugandans in this struggle. So I'll briefly address the issue of militarism, the militarism and the media, and what can be done about it. So I'll begin with the question of militarism. I know I have limited time, and so I'll try to hurry through this matter. I'll try to say what militarism is and what it's not, and the features it bears in Uganda. Now, militarism, I think, is the political philosophy and practice of applying military or security solutions to essentially political and social problems or issues, and seek to solve those issues through those means. Militarism has a long history in Uganda. And it has been utilized as a method to effect all political changes, transitions that we have had in Uganda since our independence. And I would like also to say, as a primary point, that militarism is a fundamental characteristic of the 35-year-old regime that we have. And that is very relevant on how media should look at militarism and how to deal with it. And it has a number of characteristics. Militarism has, in effect, replaced state institutions and processes. And it has also infected them to some extent with militarism itself. Well, Ugandans should be familiar with this, courts of law. You know, they've been raided a number of times, but courts of law have also been affected indirectly. You know that there are civilians that have appeared before court martials. You remove them from the civilian courts for one purpose or another, to try them again. Parliament itself, well, as you are aware, Parliament has been besieged a number of times. Armed people have gone into parliamentary chambers when you had a discussion of legislation that would amend the Constitution. Beaten up those legislators, taken them out, and then, well, the legislative process continued. Elections themselves, where you've seen the recent campaigns and elections, elections have become virtually a security operation in this country, with the egregious violence on the population. Well, the other aspect of democratic structures are political parties. Well, for the opposition political parties, it's quite obvious that they'll not be let to organize, have rallies and all that, mainly, of course, by the police. Well, the NRM is not in the opposition, but it has been affected by militarism, definitely. And what symbolizes that? All of you, I mean, if you look at the pictures of the NRM political party when they are in Chankwanzi, you'll see how the yellow shirt shyly, coyly peeps from the green military fatigues, okay? Very clearly, you can see who directs it. Now, militarism has a number of characteristics. It's confrontational. You see, militarism, you see, does not want compromise. That is its approach. No compromise, no political competition. Militarism regards political competition as enemies. That is the outlook, and we'll see a bit of this. You have, of course, as a result, high levels of armament. You have the presence of guns, but that does not necessarily, of course, promote security. So you have proliferation of armed units, with a Karanga Action Plan, LDUs, and whatever. You see, Arrow Boys, there are so many. You see, over the years, there are over 20. Then, of course, militarism in Uganda blurs the difference between police, army, and so forth and so on, whether in terms of uniforms, whether in terms of leadership, and all that. Militarism is also linked to corruption, very clearly, especially in regard to classified budgets, classified votes. You see, that provides the opportunity. Militarism in Uganda has a high sense of entitlement. All of you are familiar with, well, did you fight? Where were you when we were fighting? And so forth and so on, etc. Yeah, because it's fighting that entitles you to political office. It's fighting that entitles you to resources if you claim them. In Uganda, the other aspect of militarism is great impunity. You know, a lot happens to our population. They are brutalized and so forth and so on. But there is accountability. You see very few of them in courts of law. Or, of course, recently we've seen the bashing of journalists, but again, you don't see accountability. So there's a high level of, also, militarism, you have a high level of securitization of all aspects of life. Whether it's the economy, oil, you see you'll have oil police, oil army, oil everything. If you are removing people from Buseruka in order to have their refinery, and the object to where you want to resettle them, the housing and so on, you threaten them, you see, with police or army or RDC. So fisheries, agriculture extension services, you see, you securitize all of them. Then also, of course, militarism places primacy or a premium on security in a different way that we would see it. See, normally, security should be there for the people. But for militarists, the people are there for security. Or if you want to put it in human rights terms, what is primary are limitations to rights, and the enjoyment of rights is secondary in the context of security. Nevertheless, in spite of that emphasis, there's actually no security for the people, because the security we are talking about in the context of militarism is regime security. I think those are enough features for me to talk about militarism, but let me just say what militarism is not. Militarism is not the same thing as soldiering. There are many people who do soldiering, many soldiers who are not militarists, many soldiers who recognize, you see, civil authorities, okay, and subordinate themselves to civil authorities. There are many soldiers who are professionals. On the other hand, there are civilians who are militarists. Examples are clear. You all remember a civilian is a minister. She says, we have Maje, right? It was a political argument. Well, you opposition, you don't have Maje. You see, she was actually paraphrasing Milton Obote. During the 1980 elections and thereafter, in the early 80s, Obote used to challenge the Semogerere, Kawanga Semogerere. You see, you would ask him, where are your commanders? Meaning that, you see, you have no credentials to stand for office of president because you have no commanders, you've not fought. But also saying, in effect, that even if you won this election, you can't sustain your presidency because you have no army commanders. So, civilians can be militarists. Civilians, you see it every day. They have land disputes and so forth and so on. They've been infected by military. See, the first thing that occurs to many of them is to go and get some armed men, whether police or army, to resolve those issues instead of what should normally be done. Now, let me go to the question of militarism and the media in Uganda. Of course, there are the more obvious aspects of media interfaces, militarism in terms of beatings, maiming of journalists. You've seen it recently, destruction and vandalizing of the equipment. But you have other forms. You have molds. You know, I was doing research for that book that has been mentioned. There are molds in media houses. You have intimidation by, you see, telephone calls, over stories that anticipate. They are coming. They already know. You have RDCs. You know, RDCs are the chairs of district security committees. They represent the president. And you see that they can stop broadcasts. They can prevent the hosting of certain politicians and so forth and so on. All that is part of militarism. But an important part of militarism is criminalization You know that, for example, a lot of media laws are criminalized. They are made punitive. So journalists are arrested, there are summonses, interrogation, charging of journalists, and all that. And we need to realize that criminalization is part of militarism. That is more obvious when it is done to, you see, the political opposition. You remember during COVID, the president was very angry with the opposition who tried to distribute food. Actually, he said they were criminals. They would be charged with attempted murder. And I think you know what happened to that Mitiana MP. Yeah, he was handled as a criminal and eventually delivered to the court in a stretcher to be charged. The court said, no, we are not. That person belongs to hospital. During campaigns, of course. You know, Bobby Wine in Walker, well, you criminalize him, arrest him, take him to Narfenia. If you asked Besigye, you see, when he was campaigning against the president, you know, he would be charged with treason, rape, and all kinds of things. The amnesty law itself that we have, you see, it is aimed at criminalizing you. You see, you have to admit that you're a criminal, then apply for amnesty so that you can be pardoned, and then you'll be under the thumb of the person that pardons you. So that, you see, you'll be treated as, and you need to always remember that you are a criminal. So you have those things, but you have the general militarized environment in which the media operates. And if I might remind you, in case you've forgotten, I think it was around 2011, the president described you, the media, as enemy number one of the state. Now that is a serious matter, and it sets the tone, it sets the inspiration in which those who bash you on the street and elsewhere work. So the matter runs deeper than we think. So it will not be enough, obviously, to engage media, you see, generals, dine and wine with them to solve this problem, because it runs much deeper. And we've talked about impunity. Now, what should be done? I don't want to be prescriptive because I'm not so placed as to really prescribe things to you. But any measures that you, the media, take, you need to take into account that in Uganda, militarism is not an incidental aspect of political life. It is an essential character of the political dispensation that we have. So let me say, generally, in terms of what must be done, at least militarism must be fought. And when I talk about fighting, I'm not talking about fighting in the militaristic way, because that will be compounding the problem. Also, let me say that I don't think a policy of appeasement should be adopted. It will not do. Militarism is too entrenched to be dealt with appeasement. And by that I mean, you see, if you decide that you'll go softly, you refrain from legal action to challenge what is done to you, you refrain from collective action in order to assert yourselves, that you refrain from exposing intimidation and other military practices. If you adopt that, of course, I think you'll be burying yourselves. I know you've done a lot, see, in terms of confronting militarism. You've organized boycotts of police. sometimes that has been too ephemeral and you run back to work rather quickly. You've recently definitely engaged the army. You dined, you had wine, you played football, okay? And I noticed this, is it media, Uganda media working sector? Also, I think includes security, right? Yes, that's, and so there is that engagement. And the point for me is not to say that should not be done. All I would like to point out from my point of view is that it's not likely to be very productive for the reasons that I've given. You see that the best point are not these generals. Some of them are very fine people, I know them, and gentlemen, and some of them are even personally not militarists actually. So, all right, and why it will not be productive? Because actually the army, the police, they have directorates of human rights directives. They are trained. Their training includes human rights. So the point is not ignorance on their part. All I should say about this engagement, of course, I think you can continue with it, but please, in your fight against militarism, maybe this engagement should constitute 5% of your effort in that area. The 95 should be elsewhere. Now, the real answer to militarism, at the political level, it should be political organization. At the level of the media, it should be self-organization in order to take collective, effective action and see other concerted effort. And I can see that the note that has been struck here really points to that. The Editors Guild and all that, I mean, that is really beautiful. And you see, media has a lot of potential to do good, even against militarism. I'll just give you a few examples. One, you know, this November, the November demonstrations where a lot of killing was done, at least 50 people plus. Now social media, you've been talking about it. Social media produced a lot of pictures, grisly and so forth and so on. You could see how bloody things were. But, you know, the Monitor newspaper really did some serious investigative work eventually. Now they've put faces to statistics, real lives. These people had families, mothers, fathers, children, and so forth and so on. So these people came out. But what came out best for me, and you know, the Monitor just put it there. They just showed that a substantial number of these young people that were shot were actually shot in the back. And you know, people who shoot people in the back are cowards. Okay, and those narratives that these were violent people, you see, attacking and so forth and so on, how do they end up being shot in the back? And that made a very big statement, and you can actually almost effortlessly do a lot of things. Of course, the media at very great risk of, you know, expose acts of brutality, murder, not only of journalists, but of all sorts of victims. There has been litigation by the Guild itself, of course on the Media Council, but in the past edition, publishing of false news and all that. So I think we can build on that. Finally, and forgive me for having to point this out, I don't think we should be, as media, please don't be sucked in by militarism. I'll give 2 examples of this. I wish I didn't. One, I don't think the media should glamorize war. And this is not, by the way, very common to them, but I know there's a newspaper, you see. Very consistently, they display all kinds of weaponry, gleaming missiles, warheads, fighter jets, warships. You see, they create an air of anticipation, you know, like this Ukraine recently. You see, if you read them, you would think the next day the US will be fighting with Russia. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong, you see, with having pictures of all sorts of weaponry and all that. But you glamorize war when you do that without saying anything about what war entails for the people. Death, extreme suffering, displacement, destruction of property, the economy. Okay, it makes war attractive, especially to young, inexperienced and impressionable people, okay? And you build potential for future militarists. I think that is very responsible, probably. Then secondly, the second example I'll give you, I don't think media should adopt militaristic terms or description of what they do. See, when a media house describes, well, its nerve center as the political command center, you know, it is very unfortunate, especially because when you see command center, that is commandism. Now, when you say political command center, so you can have commandist politics, okay, and all that. So, no, we can inadvertently do that, but it may seem inconsequential, but it is important because the media is actually very influential. It shouldn't contribute to the culture of militarism, especially, as I said, amongst impressionable youth. Lastly, I think I'm overrunning my time, yes, but excuse me. I'll just give you just one last aspect to illustrate, you see, how entrenched militarism has been, how enduring, the link I've tried to make it to criminalizing, etc. Now, in 1966, 2 things happened. One major is that's when probably militarism began to rear its head very openly. That was the invasion of the palace in Mengo. As you know, Amin invaded Mengo, of course, on the orders of President Obote. A number of people died. Mutesa, the Kabaka, had to go into exile. His queen, his wife, his brothers, and many people were taken to Luzira, imprisoned there. And of course, lots of people lost their lives. There's no doubt about it. The other thing that happened also in that year is that a baby boy was born. Also that same year, the birth of that baby boy. Now, 50 years later, militarism is still with us. And in particular, 50 years later, in 2016, that baby boy who was born in 1966 commanded another invasion of another kingdom, okay, of Singapore and Zulu, destroyed the palace, killed a lot of people, all right, and arrested others. I don't know on whose command, on whose orders. But, again, a lot of people were arrested as criminals. Eventually, they were brought before a court of law. And since 2016, I think until now, they've been moving between jail and the courts. Right? Have they been freed? Some. Some are there, some have been freed. And those who are freed were probably freed last year. Some died there. So you wonder what happens. So you see, why are they there? Well, because they are criminals. And then what happens to the courts? How come that a matter that arose in 2016, you've deprived people of their freedom because you say they are criminals? They are in jail, some of them are dying, and they walk to court every other time. And I don't think that trial has actually begun. See, that tells you a lot about militarism and the potential it has to do a lot of harm. I hope you as journalists, just like the previous speaker, I'm not a journalist, I'm not part of the media, but definitely I know that access to free media is my fundamental human right, and therefore I have a stake in it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, Professor Joko, and thanks to all of you for that befitting applause for him, for a wonderful, reflective, deeply reflective, thought-provoking presentation, starting especially with militarism and how he distinguishes it from soldiering. Quite interesting, but also interesting was the work of the camera person covering us here. That, as Professor mentioned, militarism and soldiering, I just recognized that my sister, Brigadier General Biekwaso Flavia, the MP, for one of the MPs in Parliament for the Army. You didn't show disagreement on your face, but at least Professor showed in his presentation that there are those of you who are the good, fine soldiers. I suppose that you're one of them, and we want to recognize your presence here. I also know that we earlier recognized the presence of different distinguished participants here, but allow me also recognize the presence of Robert Sempala. In this day of masks, people mask their identities and you may not know who is sitting next to you. Robert has been at the forefront with colleagues of fighting for human rights, especially of journalists, and he works with the HRNJ, the Human Rights Network of Journalists. The ambassadors in the room, I don't want to make any mistake in protocol, so just excuse me if I make a mistake, but just to recognize all of you who are here present in this function. We keep reflecting on the presentations and the theme of today, but allow me now invite allow me invite the guest speaker, the Danish ambassador to Uganda, who is representing the EU delegation, Peterson Hedgeberg. I hope I have pronounced the name rightly. Yes, sorry, Ambassador, the General is raising her hand. I don't know. Yes, we will. We will have a time within the program. The organizers have arranged for that. So, but after the presentations, the formal presentations. So, Ambassador, you're most welcome first. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Representative of editors, media houses, publishers and journalists, members of academia, scholars of journalism and media studies, ladies and gentlemen, and also, of course, the spokesperson for the military. It's a great pleasure for me to speak on behalf of the EU and the EU member states in Uganda on this occasion of the World Press Freedom Day and the official launch of the Editors Guild. Now, before I start my formal speech, let me just say that coming from a family of journalists myself, I really feel at home here today. I have met many of you in my almost 2 years as ambassador here in this great country of Uganda. And my previous post was ambassador to Afghanistan. And you cannot compare Afghanistan and Uganda, and thank God for that, because Afghanistan is in a terrible state right now. But what I do recognize in similarities between Afghanistan and Uganda is that you have a really diverse media community in both countries. You have vibrant media, whether it's in social media or whether it's radio, print, or television. And you have a lot of courage among media practitioners in both countries. So that is a similarity that has really struck me between the medias in the two countries. On a personal note, as I said, I come from a family of media, so I grew up with media. And even today, my father, who is 77, he talks to me often, and as an ambassador here, there are things that I will not say to him, because I have to protect my sources, and it really, really annoys him. He's 77 years old, and he gets really, really angry when I want to reveal what's going on. And I think that's really a mark of when you're a journalist, you'll always be a journalist. Now, moving to my formal speech, let me say that freedom of the press, which we celebrate here today, is rooted in the fundamental human rights of freedom of expression, of speech, and opinion for all humans. Today, provide us with a platform to inform citizens about the fundamental issues concerning press freedoms. It also provides an opportunity to put a spotlight on critical challenges such as threats and violence against journalists. Finally, today is a good occasion to engage in dialogue with governments and remind them of the need to respect their commitment to press freedoms. To this end, I welcome that very soon there will be an open dialogue here as just requested before by the spokesperson from the military. I think that's also a mark of Uganda that is sometimes overlooked, that it is possible to have dialogue between government and media, government and military, and that's of course very, very important. The theme of this year's World Press Freedom Day is information as a public good. It serves as a call to renew the global commitment to freedom of expression, press freedom, and freedom of information. Furthermore, it acknowledges the new economic challenges faced by the media sector and their need for greater transparency and adherence to professional ethics. Now, the UN Human Rights Council resolution from 2016 calls upon member states to develop and implement strategies for combating impunity for attacks on journalists. The resolution also points to the need to maintain a safe and enabling environment for journalists to perform their work without interference. Promoting information as a public good is a value that strongly aligns with the UN's Sustainable Development Aspirations to advance, and I quote, public access to information and fundamental freedoms. Over the past decade, Uganda has been moving forward with a fast-growing economy, although unfortunately COVID-19 has now resulted in serious economic setbacks. These positive development is mirrored by a vibrant and dynamic media industry covering divergent interests and views. This has been made possible by significant improvements in information technology and the availability of tools and channels of communication such as affordable internet, mobile telephones, television, and radio sets, as well as newspapers. In addition, Uganda has a number of enabling laws to protect the freedom of expression and safety for all citizens, including its journalists. However, it is worrying that Uganda is facing serious challenges, especially regarding the enjoyment of press freedoms, such as safety for journalists who are sometimes victims of arbitrary arrest and illegal detentions. According to the 2020 Press Freedom Index issued by the Human Rights Network for Journalists, the exercise and enjoyment of press freedoms was greatly affected by COVID-19 restrictions imposed by the government. The ban of public transportation in March 2020 and the subsequent lockdown and curfew was well intended to curb the spread of the virus. That we must remember. But it also complicated the work of the media due to restrictions of movement. This negatively affected the ability of media houses to function effectively. The Press Freedom Index report also finds that while journalists and other media practitioners were eventually recognized as essential workers, which meant that they could move around, they continued to suffer while executing their work. This was especially a problem during the election campaign period. The report states that journalists were arbitrarily arrested and assaulted by security agencies. This prevented them from covering some of the sensitive issues and events that were relevant to the people of Uganda, according to the report. As the EU, we are in particular concerned about the situation implicating security personnel. Unfortunately, it appears that many violations by security forces rarely progress to prosecution, even when reported. This can create a climate of impunity. We therefore call upon the respective security agencies to respect and promote media freedom and pluralism by avoiding unwarranted interference with impartial and critical reporting. While we have seen recent signs of rebuilding trust, such as the signing of an MOU between UPDF and the National Association of Broadcasters, much more needs to be done. The recent incident when military police was reported as assaulting 2 journalists covering a demonstration in the Kiso district and destroyed their equipment illustrates this. It is equally essential for the journalists and media practitioners to be professional in your work and to remain vigilant by building partnerships among various stakeholders and harmonizing safety mechanisms to reduce individual exposures to dangers. Now, with rights comes obligation. This goes for journalism all over the world, of course. This also entails an obligation to acknowledge and live up to commitments to maintain press ethics, accuracy, integrity, and objectivity, among others. All issues that are under pressure in the media, in no way only here, but also here in Uganda. We therefore encourage journalists to counter the spreading of unverified news, which are often spread over social media and contribute to a climate of uncertainty and unease felt by the ordinary citizens. We saw this weekend, how fast a fake letter from Ambassador Attilio Pacifici of the European Union to the leader of NUP advising the leader against swearing himself in as the president of Uganda was spread very fast on social media, even after the letter had been completely rejected by the European Union ambassador. Therefore, I also really welcome the formal launch of the Guild today. I welcome the values that you promote. I think this is really what Uganda also needs. Now, to conclude, as development partners, we remain committed to support efforts for joint trainings for media and security agencies to facilitate better appreciation of each other's role and work. This can help build journalism and observance of human rights, safety and security of journalists. On behalf of the EU and the EU member states in Uganda, let me end by wishing well to all stakeholders who work to promote press and media freedoms. Your endeavors to promote the existence of independent journalism in Uganda is one of the cornerstones for the country's sustainable development and is crucial for promoting a peaceful, just and inclusive society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We are now moving to getting remarks from friends of the Editors Guild, Uganda. And we have Mr. Anthony Kujawa, who is, I'm going to, sorry, I have got a request, since I've got a request from your neighbor to your left. Mr. Anthony, allow me now start with inviting Brigadier General Flavia Biekwaso. She is a spokesperson for the UPDF and Ministry of Defense. But General, I'll give you 3 minutes, just the same number of minutes for Anthony to make remarks. If you choose to do it from there, it's fine, but otherwise you're welcome here. You want to do it from there? Oh, she should come to the podium. Okay. 3 minutes so that we can keep within the time. Or even less. In fact, I like the less more. Sorry.
Thank you. Not that I was meant to talk, but as just tickled by presentation of the professor, and with all the respect, of course, is my senior in everything. But I wanted to make a few remarks, and this is first of all generally, like when the previous speakers had said, some bit of really professionalism. I felt that the professor brought in politics at some stage, and I was lost between him making remarks on the military, between the military and the media, and then I felt he was going into some political issues, basically, especially particularly to when he mentioned the regime, 35 years, the militaries are replacing, militarism replacing most of the institutions and the processes, and saying, infecting them with a lot of, he gave examples of courts where they have been raided. He talked of parliament being besieged a number of times, legislators being beaten, elections themselves, security taking over, and then, but I think, whereas some of these could be true, realize that, especially in light of the pandemic, because this issue of the military and then especially the UPDF or security forces coming and people saying they have taken over, we all appreciated the change of the COVID, of the pandemic, and what it came with. We could have had, or the military or the security could have had some excesses, obviously, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that there was something at stake, and that was making sure that we protect the lives. It may come out differently in the eyes of the public, of different people. But we as the security, or in the security forces, where we are mandated
to protect the lives of Ugandans. We may go, in some instances, going in excesses, but we have the mandate to do that. We had a mandate to make sure this is done, and we did it. But you're also aware, Professor, if you wanted really to be realistic, and whoever wants to be realistic in this, that we had groups of people saying yes, whether you're saying 200 people, but that one we shall not do. And you have the forces that have been told that you're going to do this. If you don't do this, you know, this will happen. So sometimes I request the media, because here we are here for media, we are not here for politics, but we request that we try to be balanced. I think that's what I wanted to put forward. That we say what, we point out, without being interfered with, we point out what has not come out right, but you also put out what is not going well. Because we say, like he said, a lot of videos. And that someone noted, I think whether he's still the same, who said that we restricted people that we arrested, or journalists who were arrested and they did not do their work. It's not correct. The journalists that were arrested, yes, there are reasons, and this is particularly in Kalangala, and also in some parts of Masaka. But this is a trail that took 3 months, or whatever days it took. So it's not true that actually the military or the forces restricted journalists from doing their work. There's yes some, like you're saying, like that one of Kasidia, because we don't shy away from saying what it was, the truth. Yes, we had Kasidia, we had this boy, the boy who fell off a vehicle, and then they said that military ran over him. So all those things which are on social media, they were happening because the journalists were on ground. You wouldn't have known all this you're talking about if the journalists were not doing their work. That one, at least we must acknowledge and we must appreciate that. We may not be doing it right or the way we are supposed to do, but at least, generally speaking, I think yes, sometimes we are confrontational, Professor, it's true, but give us the credit, really. We have done well. Can you please recognize us? Yes, sir. Yes, Professor. Proliferation of armed groups, can you imagine, Professor, if even mentioning LDUs in Uganda, with all what they've done, but they have done a great, great, great job. If you're following the statistics of the criminality of Uganda and the things, the deaths that were happening to Ugandans, the women, the what, between that period before when they were called back to death, and in most cases, they came in because the people ask and say, please, Your Excellency, can you bring back these people? Can you bring... So they do the bad things, but they also, please put the weighing scale. And say, at least they show us where to improve. Say the LDUs are not doing it right, they're missing here, improve them here, but Professor. And you know, when people hear from a professor of law, of his age, everyone is going to say, yes, the professor has done what. So if you give us that, at least that, if you helped us leverage on who you are, it would help us move forward than just coming here and talking about the Arrow Boys. The Arrow Boys also, what they did in Teso, against, can you imagine, against Konyi. They rid of that region, Konyi, who had terrorized the rest of the north. When they went to the eastern parts of Teso, the people got up and said, no, you're not going to come here. And that is how Konyi was forced out of that region. So really, Professor, you're not fair. You've not been fair in some years, Professor. And it blurs the difference. It blurs the difference between police and the army. It leads to corruption in regards high sense of. He said what? Ownership, did he say ownership, that some people are saying, yes, we did this, where were you? Yeah, we've had entitlements. Yes, entitlement, some people saying so, but I think that is not part of the institution. Because you also need to differentiate, okay, at some point he said, yes, we have soldiers, he differentiated between, but also, Professor, the institution, I don't think the institution generally has believed in entitlements, as no. We are the least paid, If we were believing in entitlement, we would be the most paid people. But I think we are the least paid. And it is of recent, I think 2 or 3 years ago, when His Excellency got up and said, I need to equate the payment or the salary of soldiers to teachers. Can you imagine? And teachers, I think they are earning around 400,000. So that should give you the picture. If the teachers are earning less than 500,000, but the president is just saying the soldiers should also be uplifted to the level of teachers, so you can see that's what, is that real feeling entitled? I don't think so. So where some individuals have said so, I don't think it's the institutional, the institutional picture that we're feeling, I think. So, Professor, thank you so much. I want to thank the ambassador. At least you take note of where we've done good, but you're also taking note of where we've done right. Yes, you're saying the football needs much more, and we are saying yes. We are not saying that the football, because we played the football, that one is enough. No, we are saying this is just, yes, beginning the rolling of the ball. We have so much in store to do. We have a lot to sensitize our troops. We are going to do training. We are going to embed more media relation training in our syllabus. So yes, there is a lot more to be done, Your Excellency. With that, thank you so very much for listening to me, and thank you for allowing me this. So there are a lot of other issues, but at least, yeah, the time is not.
Thank you very much, General. Let's put our hands together for General. And these are the times that sometimes when we reflect as moderators, we realize that our work is not easy. But someone must do it. And General, thanks a lot. I believe that you are one of those soldiers, not the military. Not the militaristic type that Professor talked about. And thanks for putting together your thoughts in an impromptu manner. And we take note of all those corrections you have tried to make. And take note of the football games as well. One beating, we can play 2 football games. Perhaps it will help. Allow me now invite Mr. Anthony Kujawa, the spokesperson of the U.S. Embassy in Kampala. You're most welcome, sir. Come and talk to us in 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be here today as a friend of the Editors Guild and together with friends of the Editors Guild on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day. World Press Freedom Day celebrates fundamental principles of press freedom. Today, we reflect on the state of press freedom throughout the world, underscore our support for journalists who are often targeted simply for doing their job, and remember journalists who have lost their lives in the line of duty. The theme of this year's World Press Freedom Day, Information as a Public Good, underlines the indisputable importance of verified and reliable information. It calls attention to the essential role of journalists in producing and disseminating this information by tackling misinformation and finding truth. It also serves as a call to affirm the importance of sharing of cherishing information as a public good and exploring what can be done to strengthen journalism. The theme is of urgent relevance to us all, especially in this era of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, Uganda media has provided the public information they need to make informed decisions about how to keep themselves and their loved ones safe, offered a platform for public debate, and monitored the government's response and actions toward the pandemic. And this is an example of information being consumed as a public good. We look to the media for accurate information on the things we care about. When media shares credible, timely information about risks and benefits, citizens can make informed choices about how to protect themselves, their families, and their neighbors. Unfortunately, information cannot be consumed as a public good when journalists are jailed, harassed, beaten, and even killed just for trying to do their jobs. According to Reporters Without Borders, 2020 witnessed a deep and disturbing decline in respect for media freedom worldwide. This is a very worrying trend. The United States condemns threats, harassment, and violence targeting journalists and media workers. No members of the press should be threatened or physically attacked by anyone for any reason or detained simply for doing their job, be it in the United States, in Uganda, or anywhere in the world. Journalists should be able to carry out their responsibilities without fear of violence or retribution because journalism is not a crime. On World Press Freedom Day today, I'd also like to highlight the alarming increase of social media and internet restrictions by governments around the world. The repercussions of these tactics mean that the public can be left ill or uninformed on important topics. Today's theme of information as a public good also highlights the great trust and importance that members of the media hold. The United States applauds the many individuals here today working to strengthen the capacity of Ugandan journalists and build the professionalism of Uganda's media. We are proud to partner with you in this effort, and we have supported media in Uganda over the years through skill-building trainings for journalists throughout the country, working through organizations like ACME, Ultimate Media Consult, and the Media Challenge Initiative, through professional development trips to the United States, and by providing information to keep journalists safe. So these efforts are manifestations of our commitment to promoting the fundamental principles of a free press around the world. We honor those. We applaud the courage and determination of the independent media. We honor those who work tirelessly, often at great personal risk, to tell the stories we would not otherwise hear. They are the guardians of democratic values and ideals, and as the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly shown, they play a critical role ensuring that we all together can successfully overcome it. So I thank you for inviting me here today. I'm honored to be in the company of so many talented editors, journalists, and their supporters, and I wish the organization the very best for a successful future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for keeping within time. I appreciate. Allow me take now the honor to invite Mr. Daniel Kalinaki. Daniel is the chairperson of the chairman of the Editors Guild Uganda. He's also the GM editorial Nation Media Group Uganda. Daniel, you're most welcome.
Charles, you should tell people that I also was your lecturer.
You were.
Because, unlike you, I have no qualms with acknowledging that Professor Juko taught me as a young 18-year-old freshman at the university about media law. And I am glad to see that the delivery hasn't changed. And with Professor Juko, you need to read between the lines. Thank you very much, Professor Juko, for that keynote speech. I have the easiest job today. My job really is to say thank you. But before I do that, let me just put in two quick things about the Guild. It's taken us a bit of time to get to where we are today. We were supposed to have launched this Guild last year, but then the pandemic got in. But I think it was also important for us to kind of figure out what we really wanted to do with the Guild. Uganda is not lacking in media organizations. There are lots of press clubs for the health reporters, environment reporters, the sports reporters, the parliamentary teams. There's a union, there's an association, there are regional outfits. So the problem is not that we don't have media organizations or groupings. It's that we probably aren't reading off the same hymn sheet. And over the past 2.5, 3 years, what we've been doing with the Guild is to try and feel around in the dark and find what are the areas we think we can add value in this alphabet soup of media organizations. The other thing was, and this is very important to me, is that we, the editors, need to have agency in what we're trying to do. We have received some support in the time that we've been alive, and I would like to thank Chapter 4, the Ford Foundation, the Open Society for East Africa. I'd like to thank Twaweza for supporting us here today. But we've also put in our own time and our own resources. And I think it's important that as editors, before we go out to seek support, we demonstrate that we are committed enough to the things that we're speaking about to invest our own time and money. And I'm glad to report that today's event, a significant chunk of it is actually money that is coming from the executive members of the Editors Guild. I think that's the point where you clap. The second thing I'd like to say is that getting buy-in, and I think this is a point that Barbara mentioned, we have tried many years to try and get the editors or the journalists in Uganda to speak, to work together. And it's been a bit difficult for various reasons. And one of the things we've been very deliberate about is to try and bring together different media houses at the higher level of management to try and form the guild around internal interests of the industry rather than something that is imposed from the outside. So you heard from Barbara in the beginning about the role of the Swedish embassy, the ITP group. We did not feel that it was fair to just come and impose the guild on members, that members needed to kind of be involved in its conceptualization. To that end, I would like to thank the members of the executive, Pius Mutekani Katunzi, the managing editor and CEO of the Observer newspaper, Alex Atuhaire, the executive editorial director of PML Daily, and someone I worked with for many years at the Nation Media Group, Sylvia Nancha, our secretary from the Uganda Radio Network, which has a large portfolio of clients across the country. We have David Mukoli from the New Vision, who has been here since morning. We also have Joyce Bagala from Next Media, NBS TV, who's on her way to Parliament. So we will have, hopefully, a voice in Parliament. As you can see from the membership, that's the executive, but then we also have other editors from different media houses. So it's important to us that as many houses are reflected as possible. I think the presentation from Twaweza was quite insightful, both in terms of what we want to do and the challenge that confronts us. The diminishing trust in the media, I think, reflects both media illiteracy, the growth of fake news and disinformation, but also reflects us not doing enough to speak about the role of the media and to also hold ourselves accountable and to a higher level of professionalism. So the things that we think we will be doing going forward. Obviously, there is training, but beyond the training, advocacy. You heard about the court case against the Media Council. It's us basically using the law to defend our turf, but we also need to do a lot more peer accountability. We need to be able to hold ourselves accountable, and in the coming months we will be releasing a code of ethics which members will sign up to and then have the public hold us accountable. So I'd like to thank you for making time this morning. Monday morning is not the easiest of times to get people into a hotel, and the traffic was quite crazy this morning. We don't take your participation for granted. I would like to thank the friends of the media and of the Guild. Now that we've inaugurated, we will be, and we've shown you that we can put on an event by ourselves. Now we will be coming to you to explore ways of mutual support. I would like to thank Brigadier General Biekwaso, she left, for making the time to come. We are not adversarial, but we will protect our rights robustly. And if dialogue is one of the mechanisms to do that, we will do it. We're not enemies of the state, as has been said. We are citizens of this country, and we have constitutional rights that we are willing to, spend our lives defending, and if need be, willing to really push the envelope to defend. Those are inherent rights. They're not rights that are bestowed upon us by, agencies. They're rights that, come from citizenship. Finally, before I invite our friends to kind of do the symbolic cake cutting, I would like to thank the moderators. Charles, you said moderating is a very difficult job. I think you're stretching the truth a little bit. It's just standing here and speaking to people. It's not like you're out in the rain directing traffic. Yeah? But Charles and Josephine, thank you very much. I would like to thank two ladies. Of course, we have service providers who've helped us put this event together. I think Apt Media, the other people working in the background, thank you very much. I'd like to thank especially two ladies. I don't know if they're outside the door. Yeah, please. This event would not have been possible without the hard work and dedication of our small secretariat. Skeleton Secretariat, a lot of the work that they do is volunteering. But I'd like to thank the ladies at the back. Please wave. This event is down to that team and the coordination by Alex Atwaira, our treasurer. My job is to just wear a suit and turn up, but those guys have done all the work. Without much ado, let me invite our friends. I think some of the executive members, please come. The editors in the room. There is cake here. Myself?
Yes, yourself.
Do I have to?
Yes, you have to.
Okay, due to public demand, are you public? Are you public enough?
In public interest.
Okay, Nikolai, Anthony, Professor Juko, please join us to cut the cake. Dr. George, is George still here? And I'm told myself. Okay, so if you insist, Charles.
Yeah. Let's start by putting our hands together for Daniel, the chairperson. As we go for the cake cutting, it's only befitting that the ladies come and join. Guild, the Editors Guild, one of the things you should work on is also your gender representation. It's so male-dominated. I'm embarrassed to minus the ladies who are from the Secretariat. It would have been terrible.
I think you missed Barbara in the morning because you're late.
I'm told there is Barbara, the former boss, then there is Sylvia. Yes, Sylvia, please graciously join. And David Mukoli, you are not a lady, so don't over-defend. Bagala is outgoing, but thanks so much. The cake cutting is thanks a lot, and let's clap for that. And congratulations to the Editors Guild. We look up to you for leadership. That's a very rare value in many journalists, but now that you have taken up the mantle, Daniel and your team, we are looking up to you for organization and for taking the lead in the fight. We shall be evaluating you and asking what are our aspirations, and are they being followed? You have promised that you will keep the fight, and we will hold you by that as the leaders of the media. I must also recognize that Professor Joko actually taught Josephine and I at School of Mass Communication, Makerere. Of course, Daniel taught me and Josephine as well. And for me personally, Professor has taught me 3 times. He taught me when I did Mass Communication diploma at UMI. I followed him and he taught me at Mass Communication, and then he again taught me at law school. So Professor, I've been part of your hand, and I really appreciate, and many other journalists, of course, in this room. Dr. Lugalambi as well taught Josephine and I, so we are in a familiar area. The cake is going to be distributed shortly, so sit back, and there are a lot of things on the table, drinks to take, and something to eat. Kindly don't go, with an empty stomach. Don't walk away with an empty stomach. Otherwise, this marks the end, and departure is going to be at leisure. It's a very busy day for most of you journalists. The whole day, this is your day, and take time to reflect upon the challenges and some of the realities that we have in the media in Uganda today. Thank you so much. God bless you all, and take care. Bye-bye.